right. Welcome, welcome. All right, that's working. Let's go. Oops. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whatever time it might be where you are. Welcome to the Noided at Night stream. We're going to go ahead and just start with some news and then get into some other stories. And welcome to the Breezy Bee stream. All right, good afternoon, good morning, and good night, wherever you may be. Coming to you live from Denver and west of the Rockies. Let's go ahead and start with some news. Hope everyone's doing well. This is Noided at Night on the Breezy Bee stream. Mike Waltz leaked another Signal chat before he leaves. Trump appointed judge says president's use of Alien Enemies Act is unlawful. Trump shut down program to end human waste backing into Alabama homes, calling it illegal DEI. That's right, folks. Poop is DEI. Fun times in this new world that we're living in. All right, we'll get into those stories later, but let's go ahead and just watch a little Democracy Now! And we'll get into some analysis of what's going on.
Student Mohsen Madawi, while he challenges the Trump administration's efforts to deport him for joining protests against Israel's assault on Gaza. U.S. District Judge Jeffrey Crawford ruled the Trump administration failed to show why Madawi should remain in confinement, condemning, quote, chilling action by the government intended to shut down debate, the judge said. Mohsen Madawi emerged from the courthouse to a jubilant crowd of supporters, both arms in the air, holding up the V for Victory sign with his hands, also the gesture for peace.
And I am saying it clear and loud. Yes. To President Trump and his cabinet. Yes. I am not afraid of you.
Mohsen Madawi also asked the crowd to join him in singing We Shall Overcome. Madawi was jailed by ICE in April after appearing for what he was told would be a naturalization test. He was a lead organizer in Colombia's Gaza solidarity protests, the former president of Colombia's Buddhist Association. We'll get the latest on his case after headlines with a member of Mohsen Madawi's legal defense team. Israel's military is continuing its unrelenting attacks on Gaza, killing at least 18 Palestinians today. Israel's killed at least 2,300 Palestinians since it unilaterally ended the ceasefire in mid-March. More than 64,000 Palestinians have been killed since October 2023, and that number is expected to be a far underestimate.
This is disgusting. The fact that we're allowing this to happen and that we're sending so much money to Israel, we can't keep doing this.
Doctors prescribe treatments that aren't even available to get from the pharmacies here. My daughter needs this medicine, but it's not available. It's not available anywhere in Gaza's pharmacies. It has to come from outside, and the occupation has closed the crossing and refuses to let medicines through.
This comes as arguments continue at the International Court of Justice over Israel's obligations to provide aid to Gaza. A U.S. State Department lawyer Wednesday defended Israel's ban on UNRWA.
UNRWA is not the only option for providing humanitarian assistance in Gaza. In sum, there is no legal requirement that an occupying power permit a specific third state or international organization to conduct activities in occupied territory that would compromise its security interest.
Israel's Channel 13 has aired a report detailing how the administration of former President Joe Biden allowed Israel to carry out its slaughter in Gaza with total impunity, with one senior official admitting it amounted to, quote, killing and destroying. 30 people have been killed in recent days amidst violent clashes.
Wow, let's just back up a little bit. So the Biden administration didn't do anything to say ceasefire, and so does that mean that all of the we're working tirelessly towards a ceasefire, was that all just really a lie after all of this? It looks like that's true, but I don't want to. It looks like that ultimately happened, that they tried to say that they were working tirelessly for a ceasefire, and now it comes out that no, they were not working for a ceasefire. They weren't even trying for a ceasefire. Jesus Christ. Let's actually, I think I saw the Dropsite News article about it, so let's just pull up that Dropsite News before we get any further. Here we go. Let's see what this says. Report. Biden officials admit that they never pressured Israel for a ceasefire, as Israeli leaders boast of playing Washington. Jesus Christ. God did the state of Israel a favor that Biden was president during this period. We fought in Gaza for over a year, and the administration never came to us and said, ceasefire now. It never did. And that's not to be taken for granted. Former Israeli ambassador Michael Herzog. A sweeping Israeli Channel 13 investigation, the one that Amy Goodman just mentioned on Democracy Now!, has exposed the Biden administration's complicity in Israel's 19-month war on Gaza. 9 top Biden officials acknowledged avoiding real pressure on Israel, even as the death toll surpassed 30,000. Israeli leaders openly bragged they dragged out the war, playing for time until Donald Trump's return. Former National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, Ambassador Tom Nides, and others defended their unwavering support for Israel, even as they admitted enabling a campaign one U.S. aide described as killing and destroying for the sake of killing and destroying. Here's what the investigation revealed. So, yeah. Gross. This is who we voted for when we voted for Joe Biden. Somebody who would enable a genocide, let them play for time until Donald Trump was back in office again. And then they knew they were going to get a blank check as soon as Donald Trump was in office.
Clashes between government forces and armed groups on the outskirts of Damascus. Israel intervened by launching air attacks on Syria, claiming it was defending the local Druze community. Syria immediately condemned all forms of foreign intervention, unquote. The transitional Syrian government, which came to power after the ouster of President Bashar al-Assad in December, has said its restored order in the region is committed to protecting all communities in Syria. U.S. and Ukrainian officials signed a deal late Wednesday that'll give the U.S. a stake in Ukraine's mineral reserves as part of a joint investment fund with Kyiv. Details of the deal have yet to be released, including any guarantees of U.S. security assistance for Ukraine. Trump has sought to frame the agreement as repayment for U.S. military aid to Ukraine since Russia's invasion in February 2022. The Ukrainian parliament will still need to ratify the deal. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent spoke after the signing of the agreement.
Today's agreement signals clearly to Russian leadership that the Trump administration is committed to a peace process centered on a free, sovereign, and prosperous Ukraine over the long term. It's time for this cruel and senseless war to end.
We'll have more on the story later in the broadcast with investigative journalist Antonia Juhas. Her recent piece is Trump's Minerals Deal, a Fossil Fuel Shakedown. The Trump administration has spoken to leaders of Libya and Rwanda about the possibility of sending undocumented immigrants to those two countries. That's according to CNN, which reports the U.S. is also seeking a so-called safe third country agreement that would allow the U.S. to send asylum seekers to Libya, including people with no criminal records. This comes as President Trump said in an ABC News interview he has the power to bring back a Maryland father the U.S. government admitted to expelling to an El Salvador prison in error, but that he will not do so, despite court orders mandating the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Trump was interviewed by ABC's Terry Moran.
This is not an innocent, wonderful gentleman from Maryland.
I'm not saying he's a good guy. It's about the rule of law. The order from the Supreme Court stands,
He
sir.
came into our country illegally.
You could get him back. There's a phone on this desk.
I could.
You could pick it up, and with all the power of the presidency, you could call up the president of El Salvador and say, send him back right now.
And if he were the gentleman that you say he is, I would do that.
The comments contradict previous White House statements the U.S. has no power to return Abrego Garcia. During the interview, Trump grew increasingly agitated and repeatedly interrupted Terry Moran to falsely claim Abrego Garcia had tattoos on his knuckles reading MS-13, a reference to the MS-13 gang. In fact, those characters were photoshopped into a picture of tattooed symbols on Abrego Garcia's left hand shared by the White House on social media. Moran made this point in the interview. In Texas, a group of 31 Venezuelan men facing possible deportation.
Let's see if I can find that interview real quick, because I've seen parts of it, and that shit's so weird. Let's see. Save that for later. That sounds fun.